Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadram Karnebhi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangai Stuštuvagam Sastanubhihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So last time we discussed the second chapter. One was a person who is already having a sense of fulfillment without fulfillment of desires. For him, desires can come and go. It hardly matters because the sense of fulfillment is already there. For such a person, even when he leaves the body, he is free from the cycle of birth and death. And we also saw that the cycle of birth and death, although we implicitly accept, but explicitly we have reservations about it, or we don't care about it. So all that we discussed. In the previous few classes, the theme which was going, that was a person with a stable mind, a mind which is not perturbed. That person's characteristics were being told. And while the characteristics were being described, the basic idea was that the person doesn't depend upon his or her indulging in the sense objects and sense pleasures for a sense of fulfillment. Sense fulfillment, sense pleasures may happen, may not happen, but the sense of fulfillment is always there. That person is said to be of a stable mind. Now, obviously the question will come, how can a person have a sense of fulfillment without fulfillment of desires, or without some sensory pleasures? And then we discussed and we saw, yes, there are daily experiences where there is no fulfillment of desires and there is no sense pleasures which come to me, and yet I am having a sense of fulfillment. And what is that experience? And we found it's the experience of deep sleep. in the deep sleep, when there is not even a dream, there is no stimulus from which I can derive any sense pleasure, and therefore no chance of deriving a sense of fulfillment through stimulus. And yet, I love my deep sleep. I like to continue my deep sleep. If somebody disturbs it, it offends me. And I long for a deep sleep. So this experience itself tells us that yes, sense of fulfillment can be there in the absence of sense pleasures or in the absence of some other desire fulfillment. Then again a question may come. If a sense of fulfillment is there already in a person and no pressure to pursue one's desire or to fulfill one's desire, then why would that person indulge in activity? That person may just simply sit quietly in a contemplative mode, may continue sitting without too much of activity, except carrying out one's body's activities, carrying out activities enough to sustain the body. That may happen. And so there won't be any activity left for that person. The answer is both yes and no. It all depends. A person with a sense of fulfillment may not indulge in activity or may indulge in activity. It depends on the person's temperament or the basic genetic material of that person. Yes, one thing is common in any type of such persons. They won't derive a sense of self-worth, self-importance, or pleasure by doing some activity and getting results, and fulfillment of those results gives them happiness. No, they are free from that. Yet, a person may engage in activity because that's how the body is. Maybe that body demands continuous activity of that person. That person may be of that type where activity comes naturally in that person. The mind works, the body works, the other sense organs work fast, and they continuously need activities, and that's fine. So outwardly, a person may be indulged in all kinds of activities or may have withdrawn from most of the activities. That difference may exist outwardly. But inwardly, one thing is for sure, that person will not depend upon what is the outcome of the activity or whether he or she should perform the activity or need not perform the activity. Such pressures won't be there. So outwardly, a person may be withdrawn or may be engaged in activities, but inwardly, the person doesn't depend upon activity. Not depending upon activities doesn't mean the person is not going to perform activities. So this confusion came in the mind of Arjuna, and that's how we have the opening shlokas of the 3rd chapter. Because Arjuna thought, when a person doesn't depend upon activities to have a sense of fulfillment, doesn't depend on fulfillment of desires, doesn't need sensory pleasures, then why would that person act? There is no reason. And Krishna had praised such a person, Sthita Prajna. So Arjuna's question was, what was his question? In the 3rd chapter, Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanaste. Could you please
Yes, I'll do that.
Show the shlokas? 3rd chapter, 1st shloka. Yeah. So, Jayasi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardana Tatkim Karmani Ghore Mam Niyojayasi Keshava. Next one. Vyamishreneva Vakyena Buddhim Mohayasiva Me Tadekam Vada Nischitya Yena Shreyo Hamapnuyam. So what did Arjuna say? Jayasi Chet Karmanaha Te Mata Buddhir Janardana. So if you think withdrawing from actions and indulging in a contemplative life, withdrawing from everything and just being within oneself, okay, I will make a gesture, because this is one of the common gestures I've seen in some people. They will do like this. Everything is inside, withdrawn inside, like this they will say. So I just copied them. So withdrawing, being inside and being satisfied within by oneself, if that is what you are praising, then why are you pushing me towards actions? So contemplative life, a life of meditation, which we call Jnana Yoga. So if that is superior or better and you are praising it so much, then why you want to push me towards actions, Karma Yoga? Tatkim karmani ghore mam. And it's not like pushing into some ordinary actions. Here the actions is about killing and getting killed. So ghora karma means a dreadful action, very dangerous actions. Why are you pushing me towards such dangerous action, O Keshava? Vyami shreneva vakyena me buddhim mohayasi iva. By your mixed words, you are as if you are confusing me with your conflicting words, sentences. You are confusing me. Tadekam vada nischitya. So then you tell me definitely only that one thing, which is shreyas for me, okay, and which will give me the highest good. So what was Arjuna's confusion? Arjuna's confusion was a person who is self-fulfilled. Immediately he imagined that person is contemplative. And that's how imagination happens. A self-fulfilled person who doesn't need to fulfill desires, why would he act? So that person must be a contemplative person. And if that is what is the best thing to happen in life, then let me practice contemplative life rather than practicing such evil actions like killing our own near and dear ones. And every now and then Bhagavan is saying, you get up and fight, you get up and fight, you get up and fight. So on one hand, he's praising the person who is withdrawn, and yet on the other hand, he's pushing Arjuna, who wants to withdraw, that no, you get up and fight. So it's a contradictory statement. So that means what? He doesn't want Arjuna to have the best of life. He wants him to be in a difficult position, not getting the best, not practicing the best. That's why this question came in Arjuna's mind. Now, what did Bhagavan answer? Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Dvividha Nishtha Pura Prokta Mayanagha Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam Karma Yogena Yoginam. Bhagavan didn't say, Yo, Arjuna, you are right. Yes, withdrawing oneself, not doing any action, being in a contemplative mode is the best, and that is what one should pursue. And I now correct myself. So let us turn the chariot, and we should move towards a quieter place, out of the battlefield, and I'll teach you meditation there. Bhagavan didn't do that. In fact, Bhagavan, in some other ways, he said both yes and no. What did he say? I have said even before, there are two kinds of pursuits. One is Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. For the yogis, Karma Yoga is the pursuit, and for the Jnana Yogis, Jnana Yoga is the pursuit. So two types of pursuit. So what did Bhagavan say? Two types of pursuits. Which type? One is a contemplative type, and one is full of actions. For some people, the pursuit of actions is the best, and for some others, being contemplative, leading a contemplative life is the best. And when we say leading a contemplative life, doesn't mean that person will not be pursuing other karmas at all. No, we are saying predominantly a contemplative life. Similarly, when we say leading a life full of actions, it doesn't mean that person won't be contemplative, but predominantly it will be packed with actions. And yet the person will be contemplative. So both components are there in both types. Only thing is the degree varies depending on the temperament. A person who is not naturally inclined to lead a contemplative life, that person will fall sick doing nothing, sitting quiet and idle. There may be so many diseases that person will acquire. On the other hand, a person who is already withdrawn, doesn't want to exert, doesn't want to go, who is not a go-getter, who is in a withdrawal mode, for that person, activity, that person will not be interested. Even if you push that person, person will come back, won't be at all interested in doing it. So both types are available. Again, as I said, depending on the stage of life, at a younger age, maybe a person may be more inclined towards activities. And at a later age, maybe a person will naturally be withdrawn. Even that can happen. Or sometimes it is independent of the age. A person's internal makeup is such, doesn't want to pursue so many activities, doesn't want to get into difficult situations or things which are too bothersome, and who's happy within oneself contemplating. Here we must, I have to add this, in this age of mobile phones and smartphones, being withdrawn from activity doesn't mean being indulging in chatting or using the smartphone. because using the smartphone is also an activity. And it can be even I will say, an addictive activity. It becomes an addiction. So we are not talking of that. Withdrawing means practically no activity other than um, contemplating on the Almighty, on the vastness of this universe, or any other type of meditation. And indulging in activity means it could be physical activity, it could be mental activity, or it could be whatever, thumb activity. Thumb activity is the mobile phone activity. Even that is an activity. Next sloka. Yeah. न कर्मणाम अनारंभात नैष्कर्म्यम पुरुषोस्नुते न च संन्यसनादेव सिद्धिं समधिगच्छति न हि कश्चित् क्षणमपि जातु तिष्ठति अकर्मकृत कार्यते ह्यवशः कर्म सर्वः प्रकृतिजैर्गुणैः. So one cannot achieve naiškarmyam because in Arjuna's mind, possibly Bhagwan could sense, Arjuna must have been thinking, if actions produce results, and to undergo the results of those actions, one has to continue in this life or take next birth. So to come out of the cycle of birth and death, the best thing is you stop performing actions, and no new actions are performed, no new results. So when you die, you are out of the cycle of birth and death. No, it doesn't happen that way. Why? Because in the very next sloka, Bhagavan says that it is just impossible for anybody not doing any action. Even when I say I am not doing any action, there is a doing of what? Not. Because as long as this me, this doer is there, actions will be performed. If nothing else, at least the person will breathe. I am breathing, I am eating, I am sleeping. The basic activities of life that person will do. So one cannot be free from actions just by thinking that I don't want to perform actions. And secondly, by not performing actions, one doesn't gain naishkarmyam. Naishkarmyam, the concept will come little later. We will reserve that for some later time when those relevant shlokas will come. But for the time being, naishkarmyam one can understand as a person who has reached a stage where no actions are performed by that person. There is a sense of total fulfillment, and one is free from permanent freedom from sorrow. So that is the naishkarmyam or the moksha, what they are talking about. So Bhagavan says, by not performing actions, one cannot get the end result of being free from actions. Similarly, nacha sanyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati. And by formally giving up responsibilities and giving up actions, one doesn't achieve the ultimate success, which is the permanent freedom from sorrow. Okay. Karmendriyani sanyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharas uchyate. So if Arjuna was thinking that I can forcefully withdraw myself and sit quietly in a contemplative and lead a contemplative life, and I'll become contemplative, and I'm in the jnana yoga mode. Okay. And that is the best thing to happen, and I need not fight. But it doesn't happen that way. All through his life, almost all through his life, Arjuna had been preparing to fight this war because he wanted to really fight those Kauravas and their wrong deeds. And suddenly, because of some emotions, he doesn't want to fight. Do you think he has changed internally totally in those few minutes or few hours? It doesn't happen. What is my Prakriti over the years? To change that, it cannot happen in a few hours or a few minutes. It may take many years before that happens. So Arjuna's Prakriti means the nature. The characteristic of Arjuna was he was a doer person. He was a fighting person. He will not sit quietly. Okay, somebody has raised the hand. We'll wait. So he will not sit quietly, and then because of some emotions, he wants to sit quietly. It's not going to work because again, the idea of revenge or the sense of being victimized, it will come, and again he would like to fight with those people. So that's not going to change. To change that, it takes a lot of time. So better, instead of suddenly changing, whatever is my Prakriti, according to my Prakriti means my inner nature, my temperament. I go through by my basic temperament and pursue what is natural to me, whether a life predominantly contemplative or a life predominantly indulged in actions. Yes, somebody raised the hand. Can I answer that person's query? Who raised the hand? Or was it by mistake? Anyway. Okay. So we'll get back to this. There is another point which comes up. Only two types of nishtha or two types of lifestyle that has been mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. A predominantly contemplative and a predominantly uh, full of actions. And these are the only two yogas. The predominantly contemplative life is called Jnana Yoga, and the predominantly action-full life, action-filled life is called Karma Yoga. In both the lives, the person is committed towards moksha. Moksha means permanently lasting freedom from sorrow. Okay, the pursuit of lasting freedom from sorrow. So both the people are committed towards that goal. Both have components of karma and contemplation, but one has more of contemplation, other has more of karma. That's all. That's the outer difference. Inside, the goal is common, the commitment is common. And these are the only two yogas mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, every chapter is given a name, yoga. The first chapter is given the name Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Arjuna Vishada Yoga means what? Arjuna in depression or sorrowful Arjuna yoga. Well, if sorrow becomes a yoga, if that is also one of the yogas what Bhagavad Gita teaches, then we are yogis by default. So that's not the point. The chapter is named Yoga in the sense of context. The context is that Arjuna's sorrow has been told in that chapter. Okay. So chapter's name doesn't decide the types of yoga taught by Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita teaches only 2 yogas. Rest all, I don't know how people have generated their own yogas. Some say 4, some others say 3, some say integrated yoga. Then some have found 6 or 7 yogas. Then there is a Kundalini yoga. And then there is varieties. It's a supermarket. It's so confusing. It's really so confusing, especially when a person is a novice and comes to spirituality, and there are so many varieties, and sometimes they are mutually exclusive, that if one is true, the other cannot be true. And the person is confused which one to take, who is right, because everybody says, I am the right. If you follow me, you will go in the right path. And if you follow somebody else, we don't know where you will go. Now, whom to trust? And I faced this problem in my life. And another problem was, even to examine whether that person, whatever he or she is saying, is right or wrong or somewhere in between, it takes at least 2 or 3 years. And if there are 10 such people giving 10 different ideas, and if I examine each one and giving 3 years, 30 years of my life will be gone. After 30 years, I will come to know, I should be pursuing this one. It is just like these modern day teenagers or grown-ups, they date their boyfriend and girlfriend. So it takes them 2 to 3 years to understand the other person. And they find that it's not going to work, so they break up. So they go for the next one and the next one. After 5, they have already spent 15 years. Then they say, and now anybody will do. Well, they could have said this right in the beginning, but they won't. So that is such a big problem. And the thing is, the more confidently somebody says something, it appears to be more true. You see, it's again, let us go back to the basics, the initial few classes, the elephant and the rider. It's the elephant in me, the instinctual self, the emotional self, which really guides me. The poor rider, the rational self, has very little role. So what appeals to the elephant becomes important. And what generally appeals to the elephant? Somebody had told me, there was a statistics. What appeals to people? Which speaker gets the best response from the audience? And they found what matters is the tone of the person. Tone of the person decides more than 60% of the attractiveness in that person. The content and all occupies, and then the next is the body language and all. The content matter, only 7% of people get attracted towards the content of what the speaker is saying. And more than 60% get attracted by the very voice of that person. So this being the case, the different people telling different things, And if they say more confidently, I think that becomes the truth. That appears to me as truth. And then I pursue it, and then after some time I find, no, it's not working. It's full of contradictions. So Shastra itself gives certain rules, okay? That how do you know whether one person is giving the right interpretation of Shastra or not? That part we will discuss maybe in some other class, next class maybe, or some other class. We will keep it aside. And there are few tests that one does and then decides whether the meaning given by somebody is correct or not. And one of the most important of those tests is consistency. If the meaning is consistent, it doesn't hurt anywhere, it's consistent, then most likely whatever the interpretation given is correct. And then there are a few other things which we are not discussing now. So here, only two yogas have been told by Bhagwan, Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. Later on in the 5th and 6th chapter, he says, those who see these two as different are Balaha. Balaha means they are immature. Actually, these two are also not fully different. They are apparently different, but otherwise they attain the same goal, and in basic nature of both of them is same. Means Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga essentially are one and the same, but outwardly they appear to be different. So Bhagavan talked about two yogas, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga, no other yoga, no Hatha Yoga, no Bhakti Yoga, no. He does talk about Bhakti, but not as a yoga, because Bhakti is inbuilt inside Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. Without Bhakti, there is no yoga actually. So Bhakti cannot be shown as a separate yoga. Unless I surrender to the Lord, whom will I contemplate upon? We are not contemplating upon the share market. No, we are contemplating upon the Almighty, somebody who is all-pervasive. So that needs bhakti. And contemplation is prescribed for both the Karma Yogi and the Jnana Yogi. A person who is not contemplative and who wants to indulge in actions continuously will go nowhere, because the inner compass is not available to this person. To have that inner compass, that direction, one has to be contemplative. One has to charge from within and then move ahead. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And similarly, a person who is predominantly contemplative anyway is a bhakta. So since contemplation is prescribed for both the type of people, bhakti is included in both of them. So there's no need of saying integrated yoga and all, because yoga is already integrated inside. Outwardly, it appears to be different. So only two yogas are being taught, and Bhagwan explains them. And later on, he says, even these two are only apparently different, not really. Okay. So, karmendriyani sanyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharasya uchyate. So, a person who is outwardly restraining the sense organs and not doing any actions, but inside in the mind, he keeps on thinking of different sense objects and different types of actions. Such person is a hypocrite. Mithyachara sauchyate. There will be a breakdown in that person, or a person will very soon become a fraud. Because if the inner nature is to perform actions, to go outward, to do things, to fulfill things, and you forcefully suppress them, the inner instinct, it is not going to. That doesn't mean you don't use any force at all. No. As we said in one of the classes, if I am a chain smoker and if I need 20 cigarettes a day, and I know I should not be doing it, I want to get rid of it. Tell me what I should do. If I don't smoke, I forcibly stop my smoking. It will lead to disaster. I'll fall sick, and then again I will become a chain smoker again. I'll be doing the same thing. And if I say, okay, then I need not control anything, then again, anyway, I will be continuing with my 20 cigarettes. So what is the way out? The way out is somewhere in the middle. I cut one cigarette at a time. Maybe one cigarette I deduct every week or every month. And maybe over 10 months, my smoking reduces to half, which is a great achievement. And in 20 months, maybe I'm able to give up. Similarly, if my inner temperament is to go outward and perform actions and even fulfill desires, I'm not able to stop it. No problem. Please do so. Go ahead. Just keep in mind, don't step on somebody else to fulfill your desire. That is one thing. Second thing is, at least 1% of your actions should be where you are not the beneficiary. You start with that. Then gradually, you may change the course of your actions. This is what we have discussed. Forcefully doing anything will lead to disaster, mental breakdown. So with this, we stop here, and I will summarize once more what we discussed today. Inner withdrawal. Because of the absence of the need to fulfill one's desire, do not necessarily mean external withdrawal. It may happen to some people that they are externally withdrawn. It may not happen in some other people. Okay. And if the temperament of the mind and body is such that withdrawal is not naturally happening, then one need not force. One continues to do what one has to do, but as I said, one gradually moves towards actions, more and more of actions where one is not the beneficiary. That becomes the karma yoga. And if one is naturally in a contemplative mode, doesn't have the pressure to pursue desires, fulfillment of desires, fulfillment of sense pleasures, then one can be naturally contemplative. There is no problem. So forcefully one cannot be contemplative, nor forcefully one can be hyperactive and go-getter. So it all depends on the person's temperament. So with this, we stop for today. Any questions?
There is one question in the chat box.
Yeah.
So I'll just read it out.
Yeah.
What about Bhakti and Raj Yoga, Acharya Ji? Swami Vivekananda talks about it.
Well, you have to ask Vivekananda, not me. But Bhakti is not separately told as yoga, even though we have a chapter, Bhakti Yoga, the 12th chapter in the Bhagavad Gita. And when you read those characteristics of the Bhakti, Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam, Maitra Karuna Evacha, etc., etc., you will get a very different idea of bhakti. Normally, bhakti word comes and immediately one thinks one is crying, tears are flowing, or one is singing a song or playing some instrument or dancing. Isn't it? Isn't it true? Hello, the person who has asked, I want to ask that person.
Yes, that's true.
That's true. Now, this will be your homework. Go to the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Just a second. I have on my other device, but I cannot show you now. And I'll just tell you, just there are very few shlokas which you need to read. The translation itself, that's all, nothing else. Where is that? Gita Press. From 13th shloka. Hello, are you there?
Yes.
12th chapter, 13th shloka till 19th. So there are only 7 shlokas.
All right.
Okay. And just go for any standard translation. I generally prefer the Gita Press. It's not biased at all. But any translation is good enough. It talks about Bhakti Yoga. Who talks? The Bhagwan himself talks about Bhakti Yoga. And Bhagwan has to decide what type of Bhakta he wants. I cannot decide what Bhakta I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And this translation will tell you nowhere any tears, nowhere any music, no dance, no drama, no hyper emotions, nothing. In fact, if you read the translation, you would not like to become a bhakta. Why?
Right.
You will say it is so tough. Let me find some other way.
Mm.
Bhakti is an attitude. It's not external symptoms or external behavior. Whereas we have made a joke of bhakti and we have made it an external show of some gestures or some emotions, I don't know what. And there's just these 13 to 19, 7 slokas. And it will open up your eyes what bhakti is. And similarly, if you talk of Raja Yoga, then there is a, as I said, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Why do you leave that? Why only the 9th chapter and the Raja Yoga? Every chapter is a yoga then. Asuri Shakti Yoga, 14th, 15th chapter. 15th is a Purushottama Yoga. And there's some people do talk about Purushottama Yoga. So, who has talked what? Let us not name them. We respect people. They were great people, fine. But when we are talking of truth, great and small do not matter. What matters is truth. Okay? And who made somebody great? Circumstances and people. They themselves didn't say we were great or we are great. Correct?
Right.
So, how they said, why Vivekananda? There are so many other people who have said about Bhakti Yoga, who have said about Raja Yoga, who have said about of course, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, most of them, everybody, all of them say. Some of them have said about integrated yoga. Where is the end? Did they quote the Bhagavad Gita? from here we are deriving this. Unless they quote it, how will I accept? No matter, even when Brahmaji himself comes and tells me, I'm not going to accept it. It may be your own yoga. We have no problems. But Bhagavad Gita only talks about 2 yogas. Okay?
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
So just wanted
Yeah.
to clarify.
Yeah.
So I think what I understand is the Karma Yoga, and is it the Raj Yoga or Gyan Yoga? Those are the 2, right?
Yeah. Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga.
Those 2 Bhagavad Gita
Those
is
2.
talking about.
Yeah. And as I
Okay.
said, they are not very distinct because both has contemplation and both
Right.
both of them have this action. But
Right.
Jnana Yoga is predominantly contemplative. Karma Yoga is predominantly action-filled. Both talks about surrender to the Supreme, to the Lord, surrendering the life, surrendering the actions. Even contemplation is a kind of action. It's a mental action.
Yeah.
Okay. And both have the common goal of permanent freedom from sorrow. So both of them have so much of similarity. Only thing is the percentage of components, they vary. More contemplative, more action. Okay.
Thank
And
you.
one has to understand this. Since you have asked this question and the other person also have said in a different way. You see, the context in which these shlokas were written, or the society which was prevalent at that time, Varna Ashrama you must be understanding, the 4
4 stages.
stages of life, as well as the 4 types of professions people used to have. Okay.
Yeah.
That was a predominant thing which was prevalent in the society. People used to follow it.
Yeah.
Okay. And there, based on the stage of life as well as the profession one has chosen, a predominantly contemplative life might have been more convenient for some people, and a predominantly action-oriented life might have been more convenient for some other people. For example, if I am a soldier and I am in the age of between 25 and 50, okay, the Grihastha Ashrama, then I cannot be contemplative. It doesn't suit me, neither the ashrama nor the varna. Okay. On the other hand, if I am a Brahmin and I am of 75 years age, then the contemplative life suits me much more than action-filled life. Because being a Brahmin, I am already used to certain types of karma, where japa, puja, etc. I have been doing. And now I am already 75. I cannot do a lot of actions. Many things I can't do. So contemplation comes naturally to me. And anywhere in between, that components may vary, the percentage may vary. So this is how things work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other question? Otherwise, we stop here. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi.
Just one announcement, there is no class next week.